Hello, dear students. Let's continue our journey through Flash Foresight. Let's review a brief case study. The Miracle Airbot. Some years ago, while giving a speech to the leadership of a certain company, I pointed out some hard trends, starting with baby boomers demographics. Technology is enabling a longevity revolution through genomics, anti-aging therapies, organ cloning, using advancing stem cells technology, more sophisticated pharmaceuticals, cosmeceuticals, and nutraceuticals. We're in the process of redefining the meaning of old. There are hundreds of drugs right now reaching the end of the years of testing, all for postponing or resisting the aging process. Because many didn't save enough for a lengthy retirement, the majority of baby boomers will work well past age 65, albeit not necessarily at their current jobs. For many, retirement is shifting to re-engagement. And how big will that population segment be? The ones who are engaging in the workforce, many of them trying their hand at entrepreneurial ventures and small businesses, and with the overwhelming majority of the world's money in their pockets, that group will be huge. And I told this group of executives they will all want to hear what's going on around them. Do you have a market? I think so. The company this group represented was Miracle Ear, one of the world's leading manufacturers of hearing aids. Talk about the perfect business for catching a hard trend. There are 78 million baby boomers in the US alone, who all listened to Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin. Boy, are they going to need hearing aids? You'd think the Miracle Ear people would be thrilled, but they were not. Why not? Because baby boomers would not be caught dead wearing a hearing aid. Wearing a hearing aid means you're old, and let's face it, most of us boomers are going to stay in denial about being old right to the bitter end. This market needs their product, but doesn't want their products. What we need, I said, is a Flash Foresight. I told them about the oil executives problem and concluded with this thought. If we can put oil rigs below water instead of on top, maybe we can turn this problem upside down too. Because we're not going to find the solution on the surface. We need to look not at what the technology is today, but where it will be tomorrow. We need to look into the visible future and see what's possible. We started by looking at technological advancement pathway 1, dematerialization, and pathway 4, product intelligence. As our cell phones, smartphones have gotten smaller and smarter, we've seen them embrace more and more functions. Derek Flint style. Actually, our cell phones are evolving in both those directions. Some are getting smarter and smarter, turning into multifunction multimedia computers, while others are getting smaller and smaller and focusing on the core function that made phones popular in the first place, talking and listening. Advancements in voice recognition are already making it easier to skip the dial pad function altogether. if you want that option. Along with all the screen-focused devices, before long you will be able to sing a cell phone that sports no screen at all and is small enough to fit into your ear. Not a Bluetooth earpiece. The entire phone will fit in your ear. How can we possibly get a phone to be that small? Most of the software and much of the hardware will reside on a server and in the cloud. The device in your ear will simply access that data. Right now, all the storage and intelligence that's built into our phones takes place and space and battery power. But once you move those functions onto the server, you don't need all those chips and power sources in the phone itself. This now raises an interesting problem for cell phone manufacturers. How will they get such tiny phone to fit comfortably in all those distinct, unique human ear canals? The ear canal is like a fingerprint. They vary enormously, and there is not the remotest chance of having a one-size-fits-all model. Where will they find the expertise and experience to fit each instrument to each customer's individual ear canal? I asked the group, and they knew the answer. Miracle Ear has more than 1,000 outlets across the United States, many of them at Sears stores, all staffed with professionals who know how to fit a hearing aid to your ear canal so it feels like there's nothing in there, and tune it to just the right frequencies to make sure it maximizes your hearing. I suggest to the group that they consider collaborating with one of the major cell phone companies to produce a revolution in hearing enhancement, the Miracle Earphone or Miracle Earbud. Let's bring networking, the Pathway 5, and convergence, Pathway 8, into the picture. Add an embedded GPS microchip. Now, as you're walking through a city you've never visited before, you can say, "Where's the nearest Starbucks?" and your Miracle Earbud will whisper it into your ear. Next block on the right. As you walk toward your latte, you can ask, "Hey, what's the latest price of Miracle Ear stock?" And because your Miracle Earbud is web enabled, it can go out into the web, come back and tell you. Or if you want music, you can ask for whatever song you wanted to play or to hear. You say Purple Haze, and a few seconds later you got Jimi Hendrix in your ear. Like nowadays with the Alexa systems. As a matter of future fact, you'll want two Miracle earbuds. Why? With stereo. While we're at it, let's add even more product intelligence. With the Miracle Earbud, we can enhance your hearing so it's better than human. With your human hearing, can you get Dolby surround sound? We can give it to you. How about intelligent noise cancelling? We can do that. You wind up on a plane with a crying baby right behind you? No problem. Just turn down the frequency of the crying baby and you're still hearing Purple Haze. Do you see what just happened here? We haven't just modified a product. We've shifted our company into an entirely different industry. A moment ago, we were in the hearing aid business, a business that boomers don't seem to want any part of it. Now, through Flash Foresight, we're in the leading edge lifestyle enhancement gadgets industry. This is no longer a hearing aid, it's a hearing enhancement device. Now we can sell it to baby boomers instead of making it for people who are getting old and hard of hearing. Make it a miracle earbud hearing enhancement for people who want to hear whatever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want, with better normal than hearing. Going from the struggling miracle ear hearing aid to the thriving miracle earbud hearing enhancement device is an example of what you can do when you make the invisible visible and the impossible possible. It's an example of using the certainty of hard trends to transform a business. It's Flash Foresight. You're probably wondering whether Miracle Ear jumped on this idea. The answer is not yet, and I can understand why not. The picture I just sketched out seems so futuristic, so far-fetched. It's a cool idea perhaps, but it's realistic? It's absolutely realistic. In fact, it's inevitable. And not maybe with the earbud, but with different type of devices. And with also the cell phone. If all these features aren't technically possible today, they will be tomorrow, as a fact. If they don't do it, someone else will. And that's not a guess. It's a certainty because the advance of technology through all 8 pathways is just beginning to enter a period of astronomically accelerating speed. And you have seen it with different type of devices, software, technology, apps, and so much more. The three digital accelerators. Throughout this unit, we refer to the accelerating pace of technological transformation, but we have taken as it given without really examining what it is, why it is happening, or how we can expect to know where it is headed in the future. The hard trend of technological advancement is one of the prime movers of Flash Foresight in the 21st century. This time we went to the heart of the matter to see exactly what the approaching tsunami looks like. A close look at this super trend reveals that it is actually a braid of three powerful, interlocking hard trends, each on its own, is capable of driving a huge amount of change throughout society. But the impact of the three acting together is enormous. If you think of the forward advance of technology as a car, we are stepping hard on the accelerator, or more accurately, on three accelerators at once. As part of my work in developing what I call a taxonomy of high technology, I started charting the progress of these three accelerators. It was looking for key scientific indicators that could be used as tools for accurately predicting the future of technological transformation. The first indicator began with a simple observation made a few decades earlier about transistors. An article in the April 19, 1965 edition of Electronics, the co-founder of a little electronics company made an observation. The number of transistors on an integrated circuit for minimum component cost seemed to be doubling about every 24 months. The man's name was Gordon Moore. His little company was called Intel, and his observation has come to be known as Moore's Law. Accelerator number 1. Processing power. As it is commonly used, Moore's Law refers to the fact that computer processing power doubles every 18 months. In point of fact, this is not an absolute strict constant. For example, the doubling rate slowed a bit for a few years during the 1970s, but soon picked up again and has been fairly consistent ever since, and accelerating even so. And even though Moore himself has gone on record as saying it can't continue forever, that rate of doubling shows no convincing signs of slowing for at least another decade, and probably a good year longer than that. For example, those gains in speed have historically been obtained by shrinking processor components, but many of these have already reached microscopic levels, seemingly leaving developers few options for further reductions in size. So does that mean Moore's law is going to grind slowly to a halt? I don't think so. And you? What do you think? Give me your comments on the comment section also. Now scientists have found that DNA nanostructures about 1,000 the diameter of a human hair can serve as scaffolds for the assembly of computer chips. The process involves placing a long, single strand of viral DNA in a solution with short, synthetic strands. The large molecule self-assembles into various configurations, folding itself into a square, triangle, or other two-dimensional shape, with the short segments acting as staples. The structures are positioned precisely on a silicon wafer using electron beam lithography and oxygen plasma etching. Carbon nanotubes, nanowires, and other microscopic components can then be assembled on the scaffold to create complex circuits that are much smaller than any conventional semiconductors. Dubbed DNA origami, this breakthrough is one of many that will maintain Moore's law well into the future. And here's another example. Researchers are now working on developing a way to produce circuits that use photons rather than electrons, a shift that will catapult computer processing speed well beyond today's conceivable upper limits. Doubling every 18 months. Think for a moment just what this means. For example, take a penny and double it every day. What would you have by month's end? Tomorrow you have 2 cents, the next day 4, the next 8, and so on. By the end of the week you would have a whopping 64 cents. By the end of week 2, your cache of cash would have grown to 81.92. Not too exciting, but by day 28, just 2 weeks later, your pile of pennies would exceed 1 million. On day 30 it would be over 5 million. If this happened to be a 31-day month, you would end the month with more than 10 million. That's exactly what Moore's law looks like this, and why to most people in the 70s and 80s it didn't seem like much to get excited about. Those years were likely the early weeks of doubling penny piles, which is to say, not that impressive. It's hard to get excited about 64 cents, going from a 5 MHz chip to a 500 MHz chip took 20 years. But doubling from 500 MHz to 1 GHz took just 8 months, and that was already many years ago. Today we hit the day 28. Point. Suddenly that steady doubling of processing power has hit escape velocity, and is turning our pennies into millions. This is what is driving the proliferation of all the computer-like functions that now come built into our smartphones, and why our automobiles suddenly have the capacity to diagnose their own impending repair problems. In 1984, I forecast that we would eventually succeed in sequencing the human genome, but not until about the year 2000, 6 years later in 1990, the human genome project was begun. Years later, a rough draft of the complete human genetic code was announced jointly by US President Bill Clinton and British Prime Minister Tony Blair, when, on June 26, 2000, right on schedule. How could such an impossibly huge scientific feat have been so accurately predicted, right down to the exact year 60 years earlier? It was simply a matter of identifying the relevant hard trend. Given Moore's law, it was clear back in 1884 that it would take about that long for processing power to reach the level needed to accomplish that task. That's the astonishing power of a hard trend, and its capacity to ground us in certainty. But again, remember what is perhaps the most salient aspect of this trend. It's so easy to miss in its early phases. You can see this in the graph. As you first start doubling, the curve starts out slow. 2 become 4, which become 8, which become 16, still looking nearly horizontal. The curve is barely noticeable, but as it picks up arc and momentum, it eventually reaches the point where the graph seems to leap off the page and go vertical. Going vertical, that's what and where we are right now. And that's only the first digital accelerator. The other two are doubling even faster. Accelerator 2, bandwidth. The second digital accelerator is the growth of bandwidth. That is the amount of information that can travel over a given channel. In the mid-80s, I emceed the world's first all-fiber optic video conference in conjunction with Norlight Telecommunications Inc. in Madison, Wisconsin. In that video conference talk, I described a principle that was then almost invisible but would transform the world in years to come. Digital bandwidth increases at an even faster rate than the accelerated growth of digital processing power. Unlike Moore's law, this principle hasn't been given its own popular name. Also, some have referred to it as Moore's law of bandwidth. I refer it to as accelerator 2, or simply bandwidth. As with processing power, the increase in bandwidth started out very slow, excruciatingly slow. If you are old enough to remember, but I think you aren't, but you can check it, research it, and comment it on the comment section here at the video. The modems we have back in the 1980s, you'll know what I'm talking about, and you're probably groaning as you think about it. To use one of these devices, you would literally stick your telephone handset into a pair of suction cups so the device would pick up the phone's acoustic, the analog signals. Once you plugged your phone into your 300 band modem and got in online, you could sit at your desk and rewrite an entire book by hand in the time it took your computer, processing power, and modem bandwidth to download a single Microsoft Word document. It was slow. Today bandwidth is lightning fast, and not only it is accelerating, but it's accelerating even faster than the doubling of processing power. We think websites, social media, apps are sophisticated today because we've got high quality graphics and load quickly. And even streaming video is just like live interaction. But tomorrow it will be common to have 3D websites that allow you to walk a virtual tour of your store, new house, or vacation site in real time. We'll talk about that Web 3.0 Plus will look like and how it will transform your life and business. How can we know this for certain? Because bandwidth is on a growth curve that's gone nearly vertical, and the number of people using it is accelerating like that too, which is driving costs down and giving us the ability to do some previously unconceivable things. The most common analogy used to define bandwidth is a pipeline. The wider the pipe, the more information flows through it in the form of bits per second. A full page of English text is about 60,000 bits or 2000 bytes. One of the early digital op modems could send 56 kilobytes in 1 second. Full motion video takes roughly 10 megabytes, 20 times that number per second. But don't take the pipeline image too literally. What we're really dealing with here is a strand of fiber optic filament. The acceleration in bandwidth that made possible outsourcing to India and ushered in what Thomas L. Friedman dubbed the flat world was generated mainly by advances in fiber optic technology, which translated into a huge increase in speed and doubling potential as compared to glacially slower copper wire. Increasing these fiber optic strands capacities doesn't require laying down new fibers. It only requires innovation in the switching units at the ends of each cable. In other words, we can easily multiply the capacity of our existing network by orders of magnitude without any substantial new investment in the infrastructure. And as we'll see in a moment, bandwidth will soon transcend even the upper limits of fiber optics, as communications and networking go increasingly wireless. Accelerator 3. The storage. Even as processing power and bandwidth climb at ever-increasing rates, the increase in our tools' capacity to store all the information from that increased processing and bandwidth is going through an even steeper, more dramatically escalating curve. My first computer didn't even have a hard disk drive. Today data storage capacity is so huge, it's almost unlimited, and so cheap it's practically free. That's a continuing impact of the third digital accelerator. The capacity to store digital data is doubling every 12 months, or even 6 months, faster than the increase in both bandwidth and processing power. The first disk drive was developed by IBM in 1956, way back in digital prehistory, called RAMAC. It had a storage capacity of whopping 5 megabytes, which took 50 spinning iron oxide coated disks, each size of 24-inch pizza, along with a separate air compressor to protect the two moving heads that read and wrote the data. RAMAC total size, about that of two modern refrigerators. Total weight, 1 ton, and should you want to lease one, it would have run you 250,000 in dollars. Yet with all that size, weight and cost, it would only hold the equivalent of about one song or one short video. The big deal was that this information was fully accessible. Random access meant that you would go instantly to any point on the disk and retrieve any bit of data. Before that, if you wanted to find something, you had to rewind the tape to that point. Just as with the audiocassettes we used to listen before we even had the CDs. In the early 1980s, when we first started tracking the 3 digital accelerators. PCs were shipping with floppy drives and hard drives whose storage was measured in kilobytes and then megabytes. By the late 90s, we were talking about gigabytes. Today it's terabytes. Not for so long it will be petabytes, exabytes, and so on. Since shipping its first hard drive in 1979, Seagate Technology reports that by 2008 they had shipped 1 billion hard drives, a total capacity of 79 million terabytes, enough to store 158 billion hours of digital video, 1.2 trillion hours of your favorite music, and so on. And while it took them 29 years to ship their first billion, they project they will ship their second billion hard drives in the next 5 years. That vintage 1979 hard drive could store 5 megabytes, the same of the gigantic 1956 RAMAC device. It weighed 5 pounds and cost 1500 or 300 per megabyte. Here again, there seems to be limits to how far this trend can go. That is, when you look only at what been doing and neglect to look at what we're going to do. While current laser technologies are continually increasing the amount of data stored by using shorter and shorter wavelengths of light, they are limited by the nature of two-dimensional design. But scientists at GE are looking at new ways of increasing storage capacity using holographic principles. They have developed specialized polycarbonate materials that write data to a disk by chemically altering the composition of the material when exposed to specific types of laser light. This method allows them to use the entire volume of the recording medium instead of just the visible surface, permitting 200 times more data to be recorded on the same size disk. Because surface area is no longer a factor, the size and shape of the media can be more flexible, and data retrieval is considerably faster with the use of parallel reading schemes. You could someday enter the whole movie collection of Netflix, but you probably won't, because even Netflix or the past DVDs will soon be obsolete. After all, who buys DVDs or CDs anymore? We download and stream our music and videos and movies directly. Our current laptops doesn't even have a hard drive. It uses solid state memory chips with no moving parts. My data are sitting on a server I'm linked to on the cloud. And that's today. What about tomorrow? So, going vertical. If doubling a penny and suddenly reaching 10 million seems dramatic, imagine this. What if the next month you started with that 10 million and kept doubling? In technological terms, that is exactly what is waiting for us in the next handful of years. As dramatic as technological changes produced by these three accelerators have been until now, they are only a hint of what lies ahead, with bandwidth accelerating even faster than processing power, and storage capacity accelerating faster still. All three digital accelerators are coming together like a perfect storm to create an enormous force of transformation that is shooting up and off the charts of conventional expectations. We are about to put the pedal to the metal. The next big technological shift affecting all three accelerators is the photonics revolution, using lasers and crystal holography to store information. We've already been rummaging around in the foothills of this particular mountain of change. The drives give way to optical drives, and copper cable is joined by fiber optics. The transmission of data in the form of light, rather than magnetic charge. Just as laying down steel tracks for the railroads transformed the economic and social landscape in the late 19th century, our criss-crossing the oceans and continents with fiber optics in the late 1980s transformed the modern landscape, only to a far greater degree and in fraction of the time. These three accelerators describe a curve that starts out almost imperceptibly slowly. In the 80s, it started curving upward to the point where we could almost start to feel the change. By the end of the 90s, it was impossible not to feel it. Yet today, oddly, people often seem to feel the technology revolution is over, than that the biggest changes are behind. That is a grave mistake. As radical a change as we've seen with fiber optics, we've barely scratched the surface of the photonics or maybe quantum revolution. Crystal holographic is yet another technology that will give us inconceivable vast amounts of data, all stored in three-dimensional and instantly retrievable form. Information about virtually everything at your fingerprints. Just add light and stir. And that's just storage. Moore's law is also continuing to feed this coming sea change. As our microchips get faster and faster, we already stepped into the next frontier in processing too, nanotechnology. And, as I was saying, quantum computing. Researchers have charted the workers of soon-to-be constructed nanocomputers that store infinitesimal bits of information on single atoms. And what about the bandwidth? That may be the greatest shift of all. We have already stepped out of our copper wires and into fiber optics. And now we're stepping off those translucent filaments into maybe thin air. We have become the high wire artist without the net and without the wire, flying literally through the air with the greatest of ease. Fiber optics will continue to provide the backbone of communications, but with advances in wireless transmission, our capacity to increase bandwidth, both wired and wireless, has virtually no upward limit. Photonics, crystal holography, nanotechnology, quantum computer, infinitely extensible wireless transmission. The rate of change ahead will make the days of 2000's internet boom seem like a quiet autumn afternoon sitting on the front porch in the rocking chair, watching the leaves turn. As tectonic shift miles out of the sea triggers an earthquake, creating a quiet series of tidal waves that nobody sees or senses. Because of the ocean's great depth, its waves are very small, yet the energy from the earthquake can cause these unnoticed waves to build to speeds of much as 500 miles per hour, around the cruising speed of a 747. It is only when they approach the shoreline that their true magnitude becomes plain for all to see. That is what is happening right now with digital tech. The tectonic shifts in the ocean floor have already happened, and the ripples are flying toward us an astronomically accelerating speed. Can we even comprehend what this will look like as that relentless doubling of processing power, storage, and bandwidth forms vertical lines that go straight off the charts, and the 1,000-foot wave breaks over our shores? What's critical to remember here is that none of this is a maybe. This accelerating range of change is as certain as the sun rising in the east tomorrow morning, and it's going to sweep across our landscape like the technological tsunami it is. This is going to happen whether we want it or not. From education to healthcare, agriculture to energy manufacturing, it will burst through every industry and every institution, metamorphosing everything and leaving nothing untouched in its wake. It will disrupt catastrophically every aspect of every industry and every aspect of human activity, except for those who see it's coming. So this, my fellow students, please take a moment to reflect on all the harsh, quick tsunami of technological advancement and think in a project, a venture, company that you can foresee in the short future, and then go to your weekly activity. Said this, I hope that you found this unit interesting. We are going into Flash Foresight part of Transform. So we are starting to getting speeds. So buckle up and please proceed to your weekly activity. Thank you, and any question, please feel free to contact me. We'll be very glad to discuss any topic about what we see with the three accelerators and with processing power and storage. Thank you, and please have a lovely week. Goodbye.